Going.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Doorman. We are your guys. With you, as always, Evangelist
Steven in the building.
And, we had to kick it off with the kudos to Kansas City Chiefs. And, I guess we got to throw, because my cousin King, he's an Eagles fan. So shout out to the Eagles, all you fans out there. And it's going to be an awesome Super Bowl.
All the teams that made it.
Yeah. Shout out to the teams who weathered the storm.
Mm-hmm.
A little bitter. I'm massively bitter, right? I saw the game. I watched the game, and I was just not about the participation of the addition of the black and white shirt wearing new members of the Chiefs team who couldn't keep those flags in their pockets all game long. But
so let me ask you this question before we get into this episode.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me ask you this question.
Okay.
So you're saying only bad calls were made against
There were bad
the
calls
Bengals.
on both sides. There were bad calls on both sides. More calls in key moments.
Are you saying
I would say there were calls made in key moments against the Bengals.
Are you saying that
did
late
not
hit?
need to be
That late hit didn't
that
need
late
to come?
no the late hit was not included. I wouldn't have said that late hit was, but there were other calls. I'm not going to go into detail. I have a bad memory, okay, as you know. So I won't go into it. We'll just go ahead and give them their kudos, okay. Did they win that on their own? Who knows?
You were about to say. To say that one flag.
Was that
for traveling?
Was that officiating team? Were they paid? We will.
As many times as we've said that we're not conspiracy theorists.
We're not conspiracy theorists, but were those guys paid? Were those guys being Venmo'd and Zelled all throughout the game?
You know what I think you just did?
What I do?
I think you just delegitimized our entire history of podcasting by putting that conspiracy theory out.
Listen.
Why don't you just say
kudos to the Chiefs.
The moon landing was fake.
Kudos to the Chiefs, okay?
September 11th fake?
Kudos
conspiracy
to the
theories.
Chiefs.
Michael Jackson's still alive somewhere?
Man, he's over there with Pac and Elvis. All the dudes is banging on the island somewhere. Anyway.
For paid refs, apparently.
Right.
But anyway.
Oh, shit. Well, yeah, kudos. We won't, we'll leave it there.
We won't just shit on the victory.
No.
Did we win it ourselves? I guess we'll.
I'm a little bitter. I lost the wager, so I got to throw that in. So today, we always look to bring you guys very transcendent thoughts, right? We don't want to just rant on what goes on, although we do. Sometimes we just rant our asses off about what goes on and the stupidity that we see in on television, on social media, everywhere. But we try to bring you some transcendent concepts to talk on, and hopefully we kind of orbit around truths, kind of highlighting them. But today we thought, hey, what better, more transcendent idea to harp on than the idea of one of the 7 deadly sins.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to bring you our conversation
on gluttony.
Oh, that would be one of them. That would be definitely one of them. And I'm a glutton. I definitely have a tendency to be a glutton. But today we decided to speak on some pride. Right? So we want to just share with you our thoughts on pride, on the places in which we both see, pride playing out, and some of the consequences that are attached to overly
prideful individuals.
Super prideful individuals. I mean, we saw a little taste of pride and its downfall yesterday in the game, right? with the help of an officiating team that were very well compensated.
So good. Like I said, you're getting very good at transitioning me into these clips or excerpts that we have. This one, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with the humble is wisdom. So, I will humble you with a little bit of wisdom right now.
Go ahead.
Don't bet me on sports.
Yeah, you know what? I have lost a few times. Right?
Yep.
I've definitely not taken any wins,
So
any W's against
the pride in you decides to latch onto an excuse such as the referees were paid.
That may be the
Which
case.
then comes your disgrace.
That may be the case.
Now I'm giving you some wisdom, which hopefully humbles you a bit.
Oh, wise one.
Yes.
Oh, wise one. Thank you.
Sports.
Thank you, oh wise one. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So look. Let's go ahead and kick off this very. I mean, we like to joke around. Steve is constantly making me laugh.
Definitely like to joke around.
But I would say pride and its manifestation and its consequences and results, very serious. It's a very serious thing, right? It's a very serious idea to think about. So we're going to start off by just reading a brief little definition. And as always, Steve just does a fantastic job of presenting to you our.
So the definition of pride is a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements, the achievements of those with whom one is closely associated, or from qualities or possessions that are widely admired. Example: the Kansas City Chiefs were bursting with pride after recording a sensational victory.
Okay, so I mean, we kind of want to dwell on the sin of pride, right? And then so in that definition, it's when you derive that pleasure from your own achievements. It's an overly hyped expression,
Right.
of your own self-worth. That's pretty much what we would kind of want to talk about when we say a word like pride, or we associate pride being with being one of the seven deadly sins. It's you overplaying your position, your status, because of whatever it is you feel that you've accomplished,
Right.
whatever you've done that you've felt so highly of, right? So in the case yesterday, right, and it's a pretty simple-minded, just a simple concept, right? So Cincinnati rolls into Kansas City, and with all of the success that Burrow had, he felt, or people felt around them that, we're going to rename this stadium Burrowhead, right? Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a boastful, prideful comment, and that would be an example of pride in its presentation, right? And then so on the surface, so that loss, right, that they experienced, and regardless of whether whatever feelings I have about how it was attained or how it all rolled out, right? The fact of the matter is, a loss was had by this very prideful team, right? And then so Burrow had this, he had this cooler than cool persona rolling in, right? So there was an image of him in a mink coat. He's got a cigar, just being cooler than cool, right? And then so that attached to the idea that we should rename with all of his success in Arrowhead. Prior to yesterday's game, he was 3-0 versus Mahomes. So it was just this overinflated sense of accomplishment on his part, right? And then so I mean, and we're not just saying, okay, Joe Burrow is the you know, he's the icon of it all, or he's the recipient of this, the downfall of pride. But it was, you know, when the cookie crumbled last night, and at the end of the day, you know, he was kind of like the recipient of this humility, right? He was humbled, right? Along with the rest of the Bengals, they were all humbled.
Number
right?
58 was humbled more than others.
So I mean, so yesterday was a clear, it was a real manifestation of what pride is and what the true consequences of that sin is, right? So I've seen it in I mean, can you think of any other examples that you'd be able to, like, offhand? You know.
Well, I mean, most of the examples are for me, I mean, as basic as it can get when they're sports examples, right?
Yeah, me too.
So, you know, baseball, a guy who owns somebody in, like, a pitcher who comes up who's just lights out against the league except one guy, right? That one guy comes to the plate with this sense of ego and, you know, self-esteem is through the roof because he owns this pitcher. And 9 times out of 10, that pitcher, if he humbles himself and sticks down to the mechanics, he will win that battle, right? It's, I mean, an example is, you know, Mike Piazza on the Dodgers, probably one of the most prideful individuals that I've ever, you know, witnessed in baseball. Guy didn't have a shot in snowball's chance in hell to make the league. Dodgers give him a shot because his dad was Tommy Lasorda's friend or something, godfather, some shit. Gets a shot in the big leagues, becomes probably one of the most, in the time, most of the, like, prolific offensive catchers in the league. Defensively, a fishnet probably would have been better. Couldn't throw to second. You could run on that guy. He had terrible pop-up time, but he could hit. So you got to keep him in the lineup. So he's a catcher, gets his chance, his spot, his all-stars, his home run derby participations. Has this sense of pride that he thinks he can go to the Dodgers and ask for hundreds of millions of dollars, and they say, nah, because you're only good in one aspect of your game. They trade him to the Mets, and he plays in the Mets. Same thing, terrible defensive catcher. Can't call the game. Goes to the Mets, goes to the World Series against the Yankees. They get swept in 4. Goes to the Hall of Fame, retires a Met. Now, trace it all the way back. Again, never would have had a shot. Guy probably would have been a real estate agent or something.
So it's your belief that his pride caused him to do the wrong thing. He should have retired and retired a Dodger.
Right. Because his pride thought, oh, well, I made the most money I had from the Mets. Fair enough.
Okay.
But you take the Dodgers out of the mix, you never see the Mets unless you're watching from the stands. Right? I mean, that's
spoken like a true Dodger fan.
And also, I think people's misconception of the word pride in itself, like, we're talking about pride in a negative way. You know, when you're growing up and, you know, take pride in the work you do, take pride in your clothes you wear, take pride in the car that you drive, take pride in the house that you own. You know, there's a certain good aspect of pride, but again, we talked about this last night on our episode that never recorded. Like, if you have something, you know, if I have this gigantic house and you come over and you're like, yeah, that's great, and I feel that you don't have the reaction that I think you should have, that's me being prideful. Like, you should think how I think about this situation or about my house. You might not give a shit about it. It's not that you think it's a piece of shit house. You just don't think my way, and then my ego's hurt, and then I'm prideful in the way that this is my house. You need to respect, like my house the way I like my house.
I mean, so I think there's different intensities of the actual feeling that pride is, right? But I think there's a fine line, right, between the pride of sin, right, the pride in connection with sin, then there's a fine line between that and, you know, like showing pride in oneself being a positive thing, right? So again, we described it as an overinflated sense of worth.
There's a positive and negative to everything, I
Right.
guess. Right.
Yeah, there is. There's a duality to it all, right? But the sinful connection or the sinful presentation of pride or manifestation of pride is that overinflated sense of worth,
Right.
You think so highly of oneself that you okay. So we spoke yesterday on the idea that pride was the original sin, is in biblical terms, right? So the story goes that God created all things, including angels, right? And then so his one of the angels or the top angel at the time, or one of the top angels of old was Lucifer. And then so Lucifer, so what you got to understand about angels were created to worship God. There was no other choice, no other option as man has. Man has the option to choose God or not. Angels had no option. So as soon as Lucifer presented himself to God in the way that he felt he was as good as God or better, right? And he felt praise should also come his way. That's what Lucifer felt. God said, no, in so many words and so many, in as quick an explanation as I could come up with, he was like, get the hell out of here, get out. And so he cast Lucifer down from heaven, and then so one third of the angels fell with Lucifer. He thought so highly of himself because he had all of this support, all of this angelic support. So one third of the population of angels fell with him. So that was the original sin, and pride was that sin, right? He felt so much. So God is the thought of God is he's the creator of all things. He is the beginning of life itself, right? He's the divine, he's the all-knowing. So there was three descriptions: the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. So all-knowing is omniscient, right? Omnipotent is all-powerful, and omnipresent is he's everywhere, right? And then so he's so transcendent. He's another means of describing him is that he's the same yesterday as he is today, and he will be the same forever. So he has this transcendent divinity to him, right? So him being the pinnacle, we as human beings, angels as well, everybody falls under his glory, right? Falls under his omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, right? And then so we, if we at all have that, that overinflated sense of being, all we have to do, or all we should be doing, is looking up to the Most High and realizing that our place is, we are nothing. There's nothing that we have that is comparable to what he's got. So in that way, I have to express humility, the opposite of pride, right? So, it's one thing to have, like you said, have pride in your surroundings, your home, your team, your family, that's one thing. But when this overinflated sense of self begins to manifest itself in this pride, that's where the problem begins. So that's where you cross that fine line, right? So again, talking about Piazza, talking about Burrow, and another, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Another example that is pretty popular. Conor McGregor is pretty well known. He went and he was known as this MMA fighter with the bravado. I mean, my man, his little walk, his celebration walk, or his walk out into a fight had this sense of bravado, and he expressed this pride, right? And that pride was manifested, right? Mm-hmm. And on 3 different occasions, by two MMA fighters, this guy was humbled. First by Khabib Nurmagomedov. I mean, just ragdolled him for 4 rounds. He may have squeezed out, he edged out maybe one of those 4 rounds, but at the end of that 4th round, he just gets tapped. Mm-hmm. Right, and then he gets knocked out by Dustin Poirier in 2 separate occasions. Well, in one occasion, and then another occasion, he breaks his leg or ankle while in the second fight with him. 3 occasions in the MMA ring where it was his. This is where his pride was manifested. His pride was nurtured and was made brought to its height. Right. So that was, this is the pride of the sin. This is one of those sins that we were all able to see, to witness, and we were all also able to witness the downfall of that pride, right? We were also able to see the consequence of that. And then, so, when we talk about something, associated with the sin of pride, all these 3 examples that we are just perfect examples.
Right.
That we get to to witness. These are truths, right? Mm-hmm. Truths that were just so happened that we had the opportunity in our lifetime, we were able to see.
Right. Another sports one that's fairly recent was the Bills and Bengals game before the Bengals came to Kansas City.
Okay.
Because obviously before that, Hamlin got hurt and all that stuff happened. And I think the Bills thought they deserved the Super Bowl shot
because of that
injury that happened, and they thought because they got fucking smoked by Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And they would kick an ass all year. I mean, they lost to Miami because they again. I was telling people, and obviously I'm a Chiefs fan, but Cincinnati was coming into that game thinking it's just we're going to be 4-0 here. We're going to be 4-0 against Mahomes. And not that they took him lightly, but they didn't take him serious. Mahomes was hurt, and they probably thought, oh, okay, he's not going to be. That's still Mahomes. I mean, he's still.
That is a competitor.
380, 2 touchdowns.
Woo!
And Burrow, again, even in the game last night, I don't know if you listened to the actual commentary or just watching it.
I was just watching.
The commentary, when they sacked him for the 5th time, they said, oh, this is reminiscent when he got sacked 9 times against, I think it was Carolina, and they won. And they beat Carolina. So quarterback got sacked 9 times, and they're already having enough, confidence in Burrows after being sacked 9 times, and he still came back and won the game. Mm-hmm. But when you break it down, and you watch that Panthers game, the defense kept them in that game, right? Yeah. And quarterbacks are egomaniacs by generalities, just because they're quarterbacks, right? And quarterbacks don't do it all. No. The Bengals defense kept the Bengals in that game for sure.
In that game. But in Mahomes' defense, that dude, he was pulling out. The Bengals have a serious defense, right? But he was pulling out some miracles.
Yeah.
And with his feet, with his, these little quick shovel passes. Right. We're like, where the hell did that shit come from? No look last minute, and we're like, oh snap! I mean, it looks like the play is gonna die. And my man flicks this little.
And you would think after all of his exposure in the league since he's been in, Mahomes should be like the rest of them, should be the cockiest guy.
And he's not
in the league, and he's not. And I know it's the same thing for Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen, quarterback wise, is more traditional than Mahomes.
He's kind of a young Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, but he's got a fucking rocket, dude.
You got a rocket.
He can
throw. And he can move. Mm-hmm. And he can move in the pocket. Right. Doesn't need to stay in the pocket.
And then you look, when the Bills win games, you don't see Josh Allen in the locker room with his sunglasses on, smoking a cigar, wearing a mink coat, posing for a picture. That's a cocky son of a bitch, right?
Yeah. Well,
Joe Burrow has the right
and again,
to do that.
he has the right to do that.
But does he though? Because he hasn't shown anything.
Hold on. He has the right to do that, right? I mean, his record, right? Minus yesterday's game, but his success, right? He definitely has the right to show some type of bravado.
But why?
Right?
He's got nothing to show for it.
Sure. But I think to our point in this pride situation, that you're always going to see that downfall walk hand in hand, right?
Right.
With Joe Burrow, we were just able to see it live on television.
Right.
We're just able to see it in real time.
Right.
Whereas a lot of these situations, that pride, it'll be like a delayed.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a delayed.
I mean, look at
consequence.
the Niners, right?
Yes.
They lost against us in Week 6, 44-21, I think.
Okay.
They didn't lose since that point.
Right.
They lost Garoppolo. They lost Trey Lance.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes Purdy,
Mm-hmm.
right, out of nowhere. Wins them 6 straight
Yeah.
to get to the NFC Championship game.
Yep.
That kid wasn't being cocky.
No.
That kid wasn't
Rookie, as a matter of fact.
right. Mr. Irrelevant, actually.
Right.
Last pick of the draft.
Jesus.
So he wins them 6 straight, gets to the NFC Championship game, gets hurt. And what happens to that prideful team that was so ready for him to be 7-0
Yeah.
and take him to the Super Bowl and put that whole team on his back as a rookie? What happens? That team
Again.
imploded
Sure.
because
I mean, Josh Johnson was his name, right? He just wasn't ready.
I've been
They
watching
didn't
football for
prepare
a
him.
long time, and that dude's been in the league for 15 years.
No shit. I had no clue who he was.
I didn't either. Never heard his name until yesterday.
He's been in the league 15 years.
I'm being facetious as I
Oh,
often
wow.
am. He's been in the league long enough to know that when the ball is hiked to you in the shotgun, you don't let it bounce off your face.
Yeah. I said, whoa.
I don't know.
Like, I had no idea who he was.
But then you
As a
look.
matter of fact, when he was in, I thought, what happened?
Mhm.
Right?
I mean, they were so hurting at one point, they were putting the quarterback helmet on McCaffrey. And
That would have served a better purpose.
you
right?
think, but you can't run the Wildcat the whole game.
I mean, they could have done it until the steroids kicked in on Purdy's wrist.
He tore his UCL. He wasn't coming back in that game. He wasn't going to throw. I mean, I think he threw one pass after he came back. Because
Wow.
I don't know if you've ever
What a soldier.
hit your funny bone.
Well,
you hit your funny bone and you get that shock in your finger.
Yeah.
Now imagine tearing that. That's what happened to him.
Woo!
So, people who have
Again.
certain like expectations, right?
Mhm.
Like, this kid's 6-0. He's gonna do it again. He's gonna keep winning for us. Like, eventually, that miracle juice wears off.
And it did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, and unfortunately, it was a winner go home game. You almost want him to lose his first 2 games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we're doing a lot of sports references.
Yeah. I mean, we're a couple of guys.
Right.
We watch a lot of sports.
Right.
So
I mean, you look at the pride in LeBron, right? Like, he's probably one of the most proud dudes in the NBA, and he expects things to go his way because of who he is. But he's not Jordan. He's not Kobe. He's not. I mean, he's still probably one of the greatest.
He's deserving with the accolades.
He is.
He's deserving of recognition.
Do you think he's the GOAT?
No.
Do you think he's top 3?
Top 3
ever?
I put him in the top 5 for sure. Right? I put him in that conversation. Because to go to 3 separate teams, it's 3 separate teams, right? And win championships. Come on, that's deserving of.
But so they did a thing.
GOAT honorable mention.
They did a thing side by side between LeBron's championship teams and Jordan's championship teams.
Okay.
They did like.
Because of the people he was surrounded by.
Of course.
I get it.
Now, Jordan had a supporting cast, but they were a supporting cast. LeBron's supporting cast, you take those guys off of and put them on another team, they are the man on the team they go to, right? You got Dwayne Wade, Bosh, Ray Allen, Irving,
Kyrie.
Yeah, I mean, so
that guy.
When people say, like, LeBron always wants his way, right? Like, and then even when it comes to outside basketball events, LeBron speaks and he thinks people should listen to him because he's in his own head up here. He's a self-proclaimed king, right?
Sure.
I mean, no disrespect, and I'm not being an asshole. I don't give a shit what he does when he's not in between on the hardwood, I guess. Because I don't care what anybody does when they're not, especially athletes. Like, I don't care what athletes do when they're not between the lines, when they're not.
Well, I mean, athletes in certain sports, especially, I would say basketball is one of them, right? Mm-hmm. So they've become these icons of sorts, right? These avatars. And there are powers that be, I guess you could call us conspiracy theorists. But there are powers that be that utilize these icons, these avatars, to for their to further their causes. Right. So of course LeBron is one of those people. They've utilized his image. They've utilized his stance on certain issues. They've utilized him, right? And they're willing to utilize anyone who's going to put themselves out there, right? Because basketball players don't wear helmets or any facial coverings, and their face is recognizable. It's marketable. That's one of the sports you're gonna see where these images are gonna be used to promote ideas.
Well, baseball.
Ideals.
I mean, baseball's not wearing. I guess.
Yeah,
I guess you wouldn't know.
Right, because I want to say, like, okay, look
but
at
baseball's
how
not
big.
an outspoken sport like basketball is.
Right.
And you have to ask why.
Well, you got to look. You know why, right? Because the field of basketball, the playing area of basketball is so small, right? It's 80 feet by 20 feet, or 80 yards by 20 yards. I'm not sure.
No, it's not
the measurement.
It's not yards.
It's feet. I believe it's feet.
Okay.
It's pretty small, right? Another sport that you could point to where faces are recognizable is tennis, right? Mm-hmm. The playing area is so small. The camera is close enough to these players where their faces are absolutely
then
recognizable.
Why aren't tennis players more outspoken about social events?
Some of them aren't willing to be outspoken. Like you got someone like Serena Williams, and she hasn't been, but her face is definitely more recognizable. She's been utilized, to market brands.
And she's probably one of the most fit women I've ever seen.
Absolutely, right? One of the most beautiful tennis players. Maria Sharapova being another one.
And by fit, I mean thick. Thick.
Yeah. Anyway. Back to pride. But so of course these images being inflated by the public, by the powers that be, by different corporations, that's gonna follow, right? This sense of pride, this unhealthy, pathological sense of pride.
Would you say this unhealthy sense of pride falls into influencers?
Sure.
Because they live and breathe on that follow number.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. But okay, let's talk about the opposite of pride. Let's talk about humility, right? So you have such influencers with humility who even speak out and say, you know what? Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Beast at all.
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. Beast, he's this influencer who creates these productions, and he has garnered millions of followers, millions of views, hundreds of millions of views, I believe, on a few of his videos. But if you hear him talk about money, he'll tell you things like, "Hey, if money is what it's all about for you, then that's not, or money's not what it's all about for him." I don't want to paraphrase, any further than that. Money's not what it's all about for him. On a lot of occasions, on many of his videos, he'll give away $100,000. He'll go and give a person $100,000 to quit their job. He's like, "Hey, would you quit your job if I give you $100,000?" And well, there were people who would hesitate. A person working at some type of look like a donut shop or some type of a shop, she was like, "I got bills to pay," and he was like, "Well, 100," and then they had to bring the girl's boss out, and they had to ask the boss, "Hey, would you mind if she quit the job?" The boss was like, "I would not mind," and the girl says, "I'm gonna give you my 2 weeks notice." He was like, "No 2 week notice needed. Take it. Go ahead, quit the job, get your $100,000."
Okay.
Right. So I mean, but anyway, that the point of that story was this man, Mr. Beast, right? Who's the humility of this man, right? All he cares about is creating these productions, right? And he was more of a Christian at the beginning of his thing. As time went on, I guess he's been in this game for about at least 10 years. Anyway, but as time went on, he's kind of moved away from his Christian beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
But the dude is like he's like the epitome of humility, right? He doesn't look to be flashy with cars or flashy with his inexpensive home.
Mm-hmm.
Although he said he had to move out of the neighborhood that he was in because of a robbery or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know who else is humble?
Who's that?
Keanu Reeves.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude is obviously makes a shit ton of movies.
Right.
The John Wicks, the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
He could have probably retired and never made another movie again after the first Matrix.
Right. John Wick 4 is coming.
I know.
Hey.
Can't wait. But this dude rides the subway.
Right.
Doesn't have a flashy car.
Right.
Doesn't wear fancy clothes. Doesn't have at least an exposed huge house that anybody knows about.
Right.
Has lived a rough life, to say the least, from his teenage years to now. His sister died, his wife or girlfriend that he had at the time, she passed away. He's just a solid dude. And you would think, hearing the name Keanu Reeves, you'd think, oh man, this guy's probably, if you didn't know anything, you didn't know any better, you think he's a movie star, you instantly think he's an asshole, right? Cocky, egotistical, son of a bitch. But when you read stories about him or read articles about him, he's probably the most humble dude, carrying a computer bag on his shoulder, sitting on a subway. A lady walks in, he gets up from his seat, gives her seat, stands in the subway, and acts like he's just one of the people.
Yeah.
I would like to have a beverage of his choice with him. I think he's probably pretty cool.
Pretty fun guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't say fun, but I think he'd probably be a pretty down to earth individual.
He does
to have
seem
a
pretty
conversation
serious.
with.
He does seem pretty serious.
Well, he did do Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Dude, and that was my favorite of his movies, to be honest.
Out of all the movies he's done, that's your favorite.
My favorite, absolutely.
Take it.
Yeah. That's
weird.
When George Carlin,
Speed,
come on, man. George Carlin.
Speed and
Speed was alright. Come on.
Point Break.
Point Break was good too, but Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, those were my favorite movies.
Where he played just a dingbat.
Yeah. Whoa, excellent.
Whoa.
Yeah. So hey, I'm gonna reread that verse that you read. You read the word. The verse that says, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with the humble is wisdom." Right.
Maybe I should read for now.
Yeah. But I just wanted to highlight. But with the humble is wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So we just gave you two examples of humble, and then the wisdom, their wisdom shines.
Right.
Right? We also gave you 3 examples of when pride comes, then comes disgrace, right? So this was in this verse, it just highlighted the few stories that we shared with you absolutely perfectly, right? But will you always, will we encounter those things, falling perfectly, right?
Doesn't always come in that order.
Right? Will we always see the cocky?
Well, I think
dudes.
you and I have I don't want to say a sixth sense for that, but I'm a pretty good bullshit spotter.
Yeah.
So when people come in and there's certain, there's a certain cockiness about them. I would say I'm standoffish, on edge around individuals like that, because you're just waiting for them to throw something that they think is better than in your face.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
we spoke on it last night that if somebody irritated me enough, I'm prideful enough to think that my job is to go straighten that individual out by fighting them.
Mm-hmm.
My younger self would have. A much more mature, seasoned body that you see in front of you. Mostly because I'm injured. But, there's a certain, what would Evan do kind of thing, right? Like,
sure,
laugh it off, let him walk away. It's hard for me though, man. It is hard.
I have always been significantly bigger than most people. I mean, I'm only 5'10". I'm not a very tall guy. But I've always been this girthy individual, always in the upper 200s. And then so, because I've been able to inflict, pain, it's always been that's always kind of held me back, right? Because, there was a few times when I was a kid where, I didn't mean to, it was more playful, but, you'd hurt someone unwillingly. I really wasn't intending to hurt anyone, but it happened, and I've always just been aware that I have this ability, right, just to inflict pain. Like my I did the whole cage thing, and my second encounter I was I fought in this super heavyweight contest, right? And super heavyweight, I weighed 300 pounds. The guy was fighting weighed 375. And with one punch, I shut his eye, right? And this guy was a power lifter. This guy was able to get 6 hits off of me, right? And with one punch, I just hammered his ocular bone, broke, and so I've always had this confidence in my ability to inflict pain if I wanted to. So, that's where that whole laughing it off situation.
You're like you're like George from Looney Tunes, right?
I don't know.
I'm gonna love it.
Yeah.
I killed the bunny, George.
Lenny, of Mice and Men. Was it George and Lenny? Well, anyway.
I killed the bunny,
George. Yeah, look, it's because of that, I just always had this awareness, if I really wanted to, I can hurt someone.
Right.
So I've never been I don't want to hurt someone that I don't want to be angry and do that. So I've always kind of laughed it off and let people do their thing and especially when I know what they're not able to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're awesome. Great job, buddy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, today is an example. I was getting out of my car today, and then these kids were getting out of school, maybe high school kids, I don't know. And when I was younger, I never walked up on older people. You know what I mean? Never. And this 2 kids walked by and who do you think's gonna win the Super Bowl? I was like, duh. And this kid's like, Eagles gonna win. I was like, oh yeah? Why? He's like, well, I'm a Charger fan. And his friend was like, you're a Charger fan, that means you don't know shit about football. I was like, haha. And then this other one, was walking my direction, turned and squared up and walked at me. And I will tell you, for a second, I thought, but then I was like, oh, this kid's 12.
Right.
You know? And just a little cocky fucker, too. Like, little son of a bitch, I want to throw him in the bush. But he's like, she's going to lose. I was like, okay. All your worldly experience, I guess I believe you. Enjoy your fucking homework.
Right. I mean, but look, I want to say there was a little bit of humility, right? Practiced by you, right? Because at any moment you could have grabbed this 12-year-old kid, probably spun him around over your head, and then
hung him on the fence.
Right. But you know there was that humility, and you know that, hey, you know what? I'm no one to teach this kid this lesson.
I was like, I could break this kid in half in 10 different spots. But I won't.
Right.
But it's just the arrogance of that kid to like walk up and have that look like you better back the fuck up, you little bastard. Fucking shithead.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, humility.
Well, it's like I
pride,
said. It's like I said before. Like stories like that. Like if I would have whooped this kid's ass, and I was like, I whooped this kid's ass. You'd have been like, what did he do? I was like, well, this 12-year-old. You'd have been like, stop, stop,
hold up.
Hey. But it's just like, you know. So I always think like, what the fuck's everyone gonna say about this stupid shit I'm doing?
Why would you consider what I say, dude?
It's not that I care what you say. I just don't want to hear what you have to say. There's a difference.
Yeah, kind of like when the Chiefs won yesterday. I definitely didn't want to hear what you had to say.
Man, if you guys, I should have recorded them.
There was so much yelling.
Instant.
There
Referees.
was so much yelling at Spook's house. It was not even funny.
I wish I was.
And I was sober as all hell. Right? I'm on this 30-day sober thing that ends, by the way, it's Thursday. But anyway, I was sober, screaming at the top of my lungs. What the? Hey, put that flag back in your pocket, you son of a. Yeah, it was.
When you refed, was it difficult to call penalties?
Never refed.
Oh, then I would say shut up.
The camera's about to go off, guys. No. I mean, I absolutely understand what these guys had to do, right? But there were just certain calls I thought, man, let the game.
Well, off topic. Referees, umpires, officials in games have an unreal power handed to them, right? And I agree with you that officials overtake the game. Officials should not control the game.
How much pride do you think is practiced by these referees?
I would say.
I mean, sinful.
I would say it's not as rampant as it is as umpires in Major League Baseball.
Sure. But how much pride do you think any officiating?
I'd say from worst to best, it goes MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL.
NBA over NFL.
Yes.
Okay.
Because referees in basketball can get their feelings hurt, or somebody could say something that's a bullshit call, and it's right.
Okay.
They're penalized immediately.
The reason why I would disagree is because there is no contact that's supposed to be made. Like there's not it's not a collision sport, right? Mm-hmm. So I would think that because there's a tendency for bodies to collide, that refereeing in the NBA would be more relevant, more valid.
Oh, absolutely not.
No?
No. They miss so many calls. And again, I'm a Laker fan, and they were playing the fucking Celtics, and LeBron, as the clock wore off, he had the ball, and he 100,000%, Stevie Wonder could have seen that foul. No call, no whistle. Yeah. They go to overtime, they lose that game. He goes to the line on a missed layup with no time on the clock and sinks one, it's game over. Lakers beat Boston in Boston, game over.
Sure.
So Patrick Beverly, who's a little fucking firecracker, that guy, grabs literally a camera from the sideline.
But you're just proving my point, right? So officiating is very much needed, right? Like you want them to officiate
the right way. Yes.
You
But
really
I'm saying,
don't want them.
I'm saying from worst to best, it's MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL.
You really don't want them officiating as much as they do in football.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right.
So worst to best, baseball is by far the worst officiating, hands down the worst, because it's all like if it's a borderline call, it's an opinion call.
Sure.
And baseball has replay that can like turn those events over.
But they don't. You
Basketball, well they do, but basketball has a replay that you can't overturn the call. So what's the point of having replay? If they'd have had replay on that LeBron foul, Lakers would have won that game. Because again, everybody the next day, the league sent out a memo, said the referees in the Lakers-Celtics game last night blew the call against LeBron James. He should have went to the line for 2 free throws with no time on the clock. So LeBron misses those 2 free throws, by all means, overtime. You took that game away from the Lakers. Same thing with baseball. If it's a close pitch and the umpire's tired, guess what that call's going to be? Doesn't even matter if it's close. You can argue that call. If it's the third out in the 9th inning, game over. You can argue all you want. You can go up to an umpire and be like, that was bullshit, that was a terrible call. He has a short fuse. And you're out of the game. Football, you literally have to like physically assault the referee to get kicked out. Or touch him in a way from the back. You can't. You can brush him on accident. If you did this to an umpire on accident, you're out of the game. You did this to a basketball referee, out of the game.
That bad.
Oh my God, it's terrible.
That bad. Now again, this sense of pride, this overinflated sense of self-worth, right? Of these guys, right? It's practice. It's on display. What do you think that does? What kind of message do you think that sends, right?
Right. Well, it also, I mean, again, I'm only going baseball because it's what I really know most about. There's a umpires union that lets these fuckers be wrong. It's just like I don't understand. Like they don't have to be right. You know what I mean? And this is dictating games.
Half of our show is about officiating, right? About
it's pride, right? Because they don't want their pride hurt.
Yeah.
Umpires didn't want replay because it would damage their ego. There's an umpire, and his initials are Angel Hernandez.
Prideful call.
Yeah.
Right?
Angel Hernandez had 4 overturned calls in a playoff game, back to back to back. That shouldn't happen as a professional umpire.
That means if you've got calls that were overturned, you need a break.
Where's the need for officials to be correct? Where's that need? Or the I mean, they don't have to be right. It's like weathermen. Turn the weather on. Your phone on your app, the weather app could say it's gonna rain pig shit tomorrow. Doesn't mean it's gonna, but they said it. So people are gonna be like, and people are gonna think, oh my God, it's gonna rain pig shit, because my phone said so. Because Dallas Rain said so. Channel 7 said it's gonna rain pig shit tomorrow. What are we gonna do? They don't have to be right, but their sense of ego and fucking bullshit.
Yeah, you know what? Let's there's another example of pride that we can visit, right? And I happen to be a huge fan of this man, right? So the story of Andrew Tate, right? I am an absolute fan of the man's message. I'm an absolute fan of what he was doing, preparing the minds of young men, right? I'm an absolute fan of the motivation he provided, right? And the motivation was for men to better themselves as men and become the very best they could possibly be, right? But you have this, governing, you have this governing body in Romania right now that felt, they should make some type of an example of him, utilizing something that may have happened years ago, May have. Who knows?
Right.
Like no one even, and then there's zero evidence. And then you've got other people involved. There's a woman who keeps appearing in my little video news feed, and she's claiming that she's one of these women who are being pressured to voice some some evidence that isn't even there, right? But her and a group of other women are being pressured to say that, hey, these men committed the crimes that they're being held for, right? So there's pride being presented, right, by these governing officials, right? And this Romanian government, these guys aren't the starting point, right? These guys aren't the starting point for this hell being raised against these brothers, the Tate brothers. It came from one of these, either the government of Great Britain or maybe even America, maybe even Canada, or maybe some of these. It came from some pressure somewhere else in the world. Right. These two brothers have been in Romania for so many years now, and this is happening just now,
to silence,
at the height of their popularity,
to silence the opposition.
Right. So there is there is a pride being expressed from the point of these governing bodies, from these. We're always talking about this elite governing body who feels that they are so much better than the common man. And then you got a not so common man in Andrew Tate, who at one point was an impoverished. From some of the stories, he said he came from having no money,
right,
to having money, and he figured out how to do so, and he was encouraging other men to follow his blueprint or other blueprints similar to his. And you got this, again, there is this movement right now by a governing elite. We could put so many different names in these places, but it's a governing elite that do not want the masses to find out what it's really about. That you can and do have a God-given right to best yourself, to become the very best you can possibly be,
right, and
not need this system, right? You can be the best you can possibly be and not need any government assistance, any government what's the word? Influence, guidance,
push.
Help, push, dealings, anything, right? You can figure things out. Right. Do not be afraid. Right. That's basically the gist of his message. Do not be afraid to step out on your own, figure this thing out for yourself, and walk away from this matrix. Right? Become self-sufficient.
Well, I saw a video of his where he had some girls on his podcast or something, and they're like, "We want equal pay," and he goes, "What equal pay for what?" She said, "Well, like men have, 90% of the high-paying jobs." And he said, "Wait a minute, you're taking 1% of the male population,
right?
That are CEOs, owners of businesses. You are not taking into account the other 90%." of men who work the garbage routes, who work in the sewers, who work construction, who work. So why don't you want equal pay? Why don't you want equal rights for them? You only want equal rights for the high-paying jobs. Why wouldn't you want to be equally paid to be a garbage woman? Well, and they're like, we don't want to be garbage women. Well, there you go.
I think there's a couple of videos that description kind of fits into. His he was talking about how garbage men or men working in mines, they don't look. They were talking about how oppression. Males are oppressive, And then he's like, hey, these people who wake up early in the morning to go take out garbage, they're not looking to, I'm not going to go to report to this job to take out garbage to oppress a bitch.
Right.
He's like, I want to provide for a woman
Right.
so that she can stay home and
I want to pay the
get
bills.
her nails done and pay the bills
Right.
and provide for that woman.
The guy that goes to the coal mine doesn't
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm going to oppress women.
Yeah.
He thinks, oh, I'm going to work and bust my ass
Right.
and possibly die
Right.
to keep my lights
So the
on.
message that this man has been able to popularize
Right.
is, I mean, it's absolutely on point, right?
Well, it's
Like, no
easy.
one-
It's easy to label him again. It's like we talked about this like last night. Like when you tag something or someone as a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or a pedophile or whatever he's being accused of,
he's being accused of sex
human
trafficking,
Yeah.
right? Human trafficking,
Right. So it's easy when it's a hot button like that
right?
to
And there's
attach it to
zero
somebody's
evidence,
name.
right? I
Right.
mean, according to him, because did you see a couple of those snippets about where him and his brother were being
They're moving them?
transported? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
But it's
he's
easy.
saying, "Hey, there's zero evidence in this file.
Right.
That's what you should be covering. That's the news you should be covering."
It's easy to attach that to somebody, and then they're immediately, without a question, without any investigation, confirmed
Mhm.
to be that exact thing that you're saying they are.
Right.
So when you say that, like the hot buttons now are, right? It's race, it's trans,
Yeah. Transgender.
it's guns. So this is the cycle that this is the pride and the ego of the people who are controlling news, I
Mhm.
guess. The cycle goes race, trans, gun violence. So we've covered race with that poor individual that got beat to death by the cops.
Mhm.
We've covered gun violence because there's been 3 shootings in California in the past 3 weeks.
Okay.
So now you just gear up for the next topic of some sort of anti-trans issue because that's what's going to happen, and that's the ego and the pride of the news
The
companies that
And the ruling elite,
And the
because
ruling elite that
all of these calls
deliver you these subjects.
It's funny. It's because it's a machine,
Mhm.
right? I believe wholeheartedly it's some type of a machine, right? Because
Right.
they did it to Trump, right? They did it. They turned on this machine and they said, "Okay, let's go ahead and cycle all of these. Let's hit all of these hot topics,
Mhm.
and then that's how we're gonna shape. That's how we're gonna shape the perception of this man that they
Mhm.
did not like, right? And then so again, we kind of see it, and with the Andrew Tate story, I don't even know the man, right? I don't even know Trump for that matter, right? But the point of it is that he has been spreading this message of empowerment to men,
Right.
and then this is what happens.
The machine doesn't want men. The machine wants
The machine wants malleable
Yeah.
masses, right?
begging for
They
the
want
teat.
right. They want people to see them as the new god, right?
Right.
So that's why there is a huge, against white Christian males. There's a huge movement against white Christian males, right? This
Mhm.
there's it's been a kind of a joke for the last few years, right? Oh, if you're a white Christian male, you don't have anything to say. You don't,
You've had
product
your
of
day.
white privilege. You
Yeah.
had your day. It's no longer right. So there's been a movement against it. So they don't want that strong. And what it's a representation of. It's a representation of strength, right?
Mhm.
Strength. It's a representation of self-sufficiency, self-efficiency. And then, so they don't want that, right? What they want is they want to be able to come out and say, hey, there's this danger. Climate change is a danger. We need you guys to do whatever. And then the masses are going to, they're going to, what's the magic word?
Follow.
Comply. Is it comply?
Fall in line.
That's what they're going to do. They're going to comply. And when you don't have that malleable mass to just, follow whatever it is the ruling elite says, they don't like that.
Right.
That's when they move in and they say, hey, there's a problem here.
Right.
We need to remove all of these strong personalities who have influence over these men or even these strong opinionated women, that seek the truth, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want that either. They don't want anyone to think for themselves. They want everyone to be able to just shut up, follow the rest of the sheep in line, and move in the direction that the rest of them are moving in. So there is a sense of pride being expressed. It's on display by this ruling elite, but they are not God. As we were explaining about the God situation, right? God is the pinnacle of all things. He's the zenith of existence, right? And then everything else is supposed to fall with their eyes up, looking up and saying, in humility, I am not God, therefore I have plenty of work to do. But the thing is, the idea is that we as individuals, myself, Stephen, Andrew Tate, Donald Trump, whoever it is, all of these individuals have a duty to themselves and their families and their friends, right? Like, we don't have a duty to these governing elites, right? Yeah. The idea isn't that, we love America, therefore we love everyone who holds some type of authority. No, that's not what it's supposed to be. That's not what it was intended. That's not what the forefathers intended anyway. Mm-hmm. The forefathers wanted to leave us leeway to disagree with our president, vice president, whoever it is that's has rule over us. They wanted to leave us that leeway, right? That little slack to say, hey, you know what? I really don't agree with what you're doing, or the laws that you guys are implementing and putting in place, right? Mm-hmm. So again, we did all that ranting to say, hey, if you're not God, that pride should be at a minimum, right? We should be checking that fine line and whether or not we're crossing it. So, that's where I am. Stephen, do you have any...
No, I was just gonna kind of follow up on what, this machine that you say is going on. I was watching Sports Center last night, and there's 17 minutes of coverage about this shooting in Memphis.
Okay.
And there's certain things that should be getaways from the daily shit of what is on the news, and I think sports should be one of those things where it doesn't need to be involved in a story that is about the killing of a black man by 5 black officers.
So 5 black officers
mm-hmm.
killed a black man.
Mm-hmm. Beat the shit out of him, and he died later.
There were no white officers whatsoever.
Nope.
In that melee.
Nope.
Okay.
So,
so it wasn't a race thing.
Oh no, it is a race thing.
Why is it a race thing?
Because the man.
Are all cops considered white now?
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's the man has poisoned these 5 men, thinking that all black men are dangerous.
Oh.
I don't know. It's crazy, man.
Oh.
But I don't think that news story should be on ESPN and covered by ESPN because it's sports, right? It had nothing to do with that. Just because it was in a city that happens to have a basketball team doesn't mean that there needs to be extended coverage on this situation on ESPN. Why isn't that story on the Disney Channel?
Why, Steve?
I don't know. I'm asking. Why isn't it on?
No
why
idea.
isn't it? Why is it on the Weather Channel? I mean, there's weather events in Memphis, right?
Sure.
Why isn't it on any other channel? Why isn't it on MTV? Why isn't it on anything? I don't understand, and I really think it's
Do you
because
think they were trying to key in on a specific?
yeah, I think
demographic?
they're trying to key in on people who don't watch the news, right?
Ah,
So it's trying to reach out to anybody who doesn't watch the news because of seeing shit stories all day, every day.
right.
So they put it on a different network that covers a completely different avenue of events.
What was it on ESPN?
It was on ESPN for 17 minutes.
Shit. Wow.
They talked about the moment of silence that the Memphis Grizzlies had, which, okay.
Wow.
They talked about before the game, they talked to 4 different players about how they feel, and they all said the same thing. It's a shame that I'm scared to get pulled over. Like, you are a fucking basketball player in that city. Nobody is going to mistake you for doing something unless you've done something wrong and you run away from the cops. I don't know.
You know, I'm not gonna go on record and saying cops are perfect, right? Because I've had my
Of
run-ins
course not.
with cops. But I don't know, man. We live in a time where crime is on.
Well, it's cool. It's cool to shoot a cop.
Crime
So-
is just stupidity today.
right. Mm-hmm.
Right, when you have laws in California saying that you can't be arrested for shoplifting unless it's something over $900, right? And then you see all of these smash and grabs going on, like these group meetups at fucking convenience stores where there's 20 to 30 people deep, and just looting. And then there's nothing that law enforcement can do, right? When you see situations like that, when you see people openly, fighting with police officers, and I guess the fighting with police officers back in the days happened, right? I know a few of loved ones of mine, who got into fights with police officers, but I guess it's the culture today where there's phones and cameras filming things on a day-to-day basis, every hour, like on the hour. It just brings it into, it just brings it to light, like much more than it was back in the days, right? Like we would only hear the stories, and then have little celebrations for them being locked up or whatever. You know what I mean? Or before they went away, we'd be saying our little farewells and goodbyes. But now you've got stuff on television, and or your social media feed, and it's like, wow, they got it on camera. There's evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. Must be rough being a cop. Must be rough being a criminal. Must be rough being a
Not rough being a criminal now. It almost pays.
Must be rough being anybody intending to do harm.
It almost pays to be a cop now.
I don't know, man.
It's crazy that it's.
Oh, what is it? Tyree is his name? Tyree Nichols?
or Tyree probably.
Mother of Tyree Nichols calls for peaceful protest.
Because they were burning down the city. Because initially another black man was killed by the cops. After they released the video, they're like, oh shit.
Escalating into what authorities described as a display of staggering brutality. Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jesus Christ, be with us all. Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
And with that, c'est la vie.